to, right from the start, point out that there have been many belief systems in the history of humanity, especially polytheistic religions, like in ancient Greece, the belief in multiple gods. We've had Norse gods, we have indigenous religions that believe in multiple higher powers. So theism is not just monotheism, the belief in one God. Theism can come in many different types, but typically refers to belief in a personal God, right? So that would be standard belief in the traditional Abrahamic religions. So a person who has this belief is called a theist. Further down the spectrum, we have what's called agnosticism. And this is not necessarily a belief, but rather the withholding of belief. So sometimes people frame agnostics as they just don't know. They're suspending belief, but maybe they're just not sure. That doesn't capture all agnostics, right? Sometimes it can be, we just can't have knowledge of God, and we never will be in a position to have knowledge of God. So that doesn't qualify as atheism, but rather a skeptical agnosticism. And it could be because either they have not been sufficiently convinced yet, or because they think that such a thing is beyond our ability to know, which I just mentioned. So some form of religious skepticism. So a person who neither accepts nor rejects the existence of a god or gods is called an agnostic for our purposes. And then we have atheism, which is the belief in the non-existence of any god or gods. In other words, as the definition of the word or the root of the word implies, it's a denial of belief in a deity, personal or otherwise. So a person who has this belief is appropriately called an atheist. But there's also different kinds of theism, as I've alluded to, right? So monotheism is the belief in a single, unified, personal deity, one who listens to prayers and intervenes in worldly affairs. So again, typically we think of Christianity and Islam and Judaism as being monotheistic traditions, because in all three of those belief systems, to various degrees, of course, there are theological differences, but for the most part, they believe in a personal deity, a God who cares about and perhaps intervenes in the events in the world. But as I mentioned, there's lots of polytheistic belief systems that we get in different parts of the world, even in, as I said, indigenous Native American religions or belief systems. So polytheism is the belief in many personal deities. There's also deism, which if you've studied the American Revolution or the founding fathers, many understandably think with good evidence that people like Thomas Jefferson was a deist. This is a belief in an impersonal deity who lets the world run on its own. Maybe it's the view that God created the universe, but is not currently involved in worldly affairs. So interestingly, if you know a little bit about Thomas Jefferson, he wrote his own Bible. He took out all of the miracles of Jesus. And there's, again, good evidence that many of the founding fathers were deists, not theists. So sometimes people, I think, mischaracterize the belief systems of the American founding fathers. But there are people today who think, yeah, there might have been a God to set things in motion, but the miracles part and the intervening in human affairs, that doesn't occur. So that would be deism. There's also pantheism. And this is the belief that the universe and the divine are one and the same, a unified whole. So oftentimes, even today, when you hear people talk about God is everywhere, that God is just the same as reality, that's more of a pantheist belief in God. We can also, very similarly, panentheism is a belief in a deity that is part of, yet conceptually distinct from the universe. So hopefully you're just taking away the idea that beliefs come in different kinds, even within theism. All right, so as I mentioned, there have been numerous theistic religions that we could spend more time on if we were a world religion or comparative religion class. The oldest monotheistic religion is Zoroastrianism, which has a very interesting history. If you haven't heard of that, I encourage you to maybe do a little background search on Zoroastrianism, the parallels between Zoroastrianism, which started in roughly what we would call Mesopotamia, the Middle East, Persia, has a lot of parallels with later religions like Christianity, but I'll set those interesting historical points aside. Then we obviously have the Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, which include elements of both monotheism and deism, though again, it depends on who you ask, right? There's a lot of theological disagreement about the extent of certain tenets of those religions, right? Like the Holy Trinity might be viewed as polytheistic in Judaism and Islam, for example. We also have Sikhism, which is a pantheistic monotheism of sorts. Hinduism can often be described as a combination of monotheism and polytheism. So certainly can come across as pantheistic. Buddhism, which incorporates elements of both atheism and polytheism. And Confucianism and Taoism, which can combine elements of atheism and polytheism and come across as very pantheistic. So lots of different elements of theism and major world religions, as we can see here. Right, so I forgot I put this note in. Yeah, it's important to point out that these views have changed, right? Eastern religions and even New Age religions, we should point out, have evolved over time to hold many different views of the divine and are also more inclusive of what may appear to otherwise be contradictory beliefs. So especially in Buddhism.